When Valve needs a new item to entice people to play a new event, or to purchase a new chest, it seems to always be a new Baby Roshan courier. I was always curious how it got to the point that this is the token item of hyper rare and super valuable that Valve seems to use over and over again. So I wanted to look into how it got to that point, where these 14 different couriers came from, and how you got them in the first place. And also have a look at how many exist of each type when they came out. So the first Dietide event in October of 2012 saw the addition of the Baby Roshan courier in its original form, and also the unusual version, which was on the drop list of all subsequent chests for some time after Dietide 2012. So every Dota treasure back then had a rare chance of dropping an unusual courier, and the drop list contained many couriers. However, quite quickly, the Baby Roshan rose to the top as the most in demand and most valuable of the list of all of the couriers that were possible to drop. The couriers came in an array of different unusual effects through the prismatic and ethereal gem system that originated in those chests. That was the origin of the original Baby Roshan courier in unusual quality. Those treasures had about a 1 in 300 chance of dropping an unusual at all, and the chance of that being a Baby Rosh was something like 1 in 12. You can pick these up for as low as $130 today, depending on the types of gems that are inside them. In that same update, a gold version of the Baby Rosh courier was added, and I think there being a gold version of that courier at the same time gave it a head start in the allure of it as a hyper rare item and cemented it as being super valuable at the time. Now, this version of the courier came with prismatic and ethereal gems socketed in it, which you can remove, so therefore it is effectively unusual. It has the Touch of Flame and Midas Gold gems, which are still very valuable today. It was dropped during the first Dietide event in 2012. The courier was awarded to the players of the match who killed Roshan the fastest. This was in a leaderboard called the Sugar Rush Hall of Fame. The event at the time was rife with exploits. The winning time within the second week was down to something like 9 milliseconds, not something much a regular player could ever hope to achieve. There was even a recorded case quite early on of a single player who would use 9 alternate accounts and get them in the same game, complete the event in 5 seconds and secure the couriers on his main account and 9 of his alternates, and sold all of them immediately for a reported $1,000 at the time. The cheapest example of this courier today is around $4,000. The event lasted for 14 days and every day 10 couriers were awarded, so 140 of these exist. The Platinum Baby Roshan was added in 2013 with the following Dietide event. This was the year that players were begging Valve to return again with another Dota event. They hadn't really experienced anything other than Dietide, so they were begging for that, not really knowing what they were wishing for, and it turns out they kind of just wanted something other than vanilla Dota. But this event turned out to be much more of the same, and the vocal minority really hated this event for the same reasons. The problems of the previous year were exponentially worse. There were way less free items and way more purchasing required to obtain anything good. The Sugar Rush Hall of Fame was again how these couriers were handed out, and again exploitation was rife and not handled by Valve really in any way once the event started. 10 couriers were awarded every 24 hours and the event ran for 2 weeks, so 140 of these exist also. This courier also has unusual gems. It has the Ionic Vapor effect with pristine platinum color. The cheapest one you can find at the moment on the market is about $2,200. There are a lot more of these being traded than the golden ones. Unless I'm mistaken, there's an equal number of them, but because these were once there was a higher player count, I think these just are more frequently owned by people who were still in the trading community at a time that they were valuable, whereas the golden ones, I think there are a lot of them on dead accounts. Also, a large number of these couriers exist that were duplicated by Steam support. Back in the day, there were a lot of people who would scam Steam support by having their accounts staged being hacked and having their items traded away and stolen, and Steam support would duplicate the items, and this happened a lot with this courier because it was one of the most expensive items in the game at the time. The next one wouldn't be added for about 2 years. 2015 saw the Lava Baby Roshan and Ice Baby Roshan added at the same time. The Lava Baby Rosh has the Touch of Flame effect with Pyroclastic Flow color, and the Ice has a Touch of Frost with Glacial Flow color. Now, these were only possible to get by purchasing a real-life Roshan statue from a Chinese collectible company. The statue was 44 centimeters tall and cost roughly $650 $100 equivalent at the time. Today, that money would be worth about $850. Because it was only purchasable from a Chinese vendor, it effectively made it an exclusive for the Chinese servers, which are referred to as Perfect World. It was given out also by Perfect World admins for players who reached playoff positions in Perfect World tournaments. They awarded something called Roshan's Gift, which was pseudo treasure at the time. It would randomly award either the lava or the ice version of the courier, and had a rare chance of also awarding a corresponding loading screen. These couriers are both very similar in price. They don't vary a huge amount anymore. They're both about $600 to $700, depending on the gems that are socketed in them. Interestingly, both of these items were also available in the 2016 Trust of the Benefactor treasure. This chest had a specific drop list of ultra rare items which were coveted by the community. Valve released this chest with a limited X amount of item drops for each specific item, and they noted that that drop amount was equaling less than 5% of the total supply of those items that currently existed on the market. The ice and lava roche were listed as 50 possible drops in the chest, which means that there is technically at the very least 1,000 of each courier in supply. These chests definitely hurt the value of the items as a whole, because in the space of whales, purchasing items and the value of items isn't specifically always linked to how X rare they actually are, but the perception of how rare they are. And these items dropping again at all in any way definitely had a tangible impact on their value, because although the impact on supply is small, like at less than 5%, that includes all of the items that are on dead accounts or on accounts that are never going to trade those items. So increasing the supply by 5% is increasing a 5% liquid supply. So these new versions of the items were far more likely to be traded and sold at the time, whereas the old ones were far less liquid and held onto by the accounts that owned them. But regardless, I think the Trust of the Benefactor chest and that drop system was a really respectful way to allow the community to get their hands on items which have been out of circulation for a really long time. The Dark Moon Baby Roshan was dropped in the Dark Moon event. It was obtained at, quote, a very low chance when spinning the event reward wheel. Now, Valve reuses logic for dropping items constantly. Something described like this by Valve typically means a 1 in 100,000 chance. This tracks with their current supply I can figure out from the market, and given the length of the event and the player count at the time, this checks out. These were very limited. I think there is less than 100 that exist, although I'm not certain. The cheapest one I can possibly find right now is about 11 grand, but these look spectacular in game. They're probably one of the best in terms of effects, so these are really sought after by collectors. The Desert Sands Baby Roche was dropped during Siltbreaker in a treasure which was given to players who completed the event with 3 stars. The treasure had what was listed as an exceedingly rare drop of this courier, and they used language of, quote, an unspeakably low chance. So again, I would assume that this is probably also 1 in 100,000 at the time. Somebody actually unboxed one of these in 2020, and I think the last one unboxed before that was actually during the event, so seeing a new one is pretty crazy. People regularly reported opening like 1,000 chests, 2,000 chests, and not getting a courier, so the drop rate does track. These are super limited. There are really few of these that exist. The cheapest one I can find actively for sale on the market is something like $15,000, but that's massively influenced by the supply. They're definitely not trading actively at that price, but there are really few of these that are moving around. The model I don't think is very good. The effect is okay, it's quite obtuse, it's very visible in game. As far as the effects go, this is a decent one, but I don't really think this style warrants the cost that's associated with its rarity. I think this is definitely one that is more rare than it is cool and valuable, and most of its value comes from its rarity. The Jade Roshan was added in 2018 and was awarded during the 2018 Battle Pass when completing the cavern crawl. Each time you cleared a room in the cavern, a reported 1 in 250,000 chance was triggered. I found this number digging deep on the Chinese Dota 2 disclosures when legislation was passed regulating gambling in children's entertainment was enforced, and they had to post all of their odds for Dota treasures and chests, and this fell under that umbrella at the time. And this was the first time that anything like this was revealed to the community. A drop chance this low was exposed, I think, for the first time in all of Dota, the implication being that the past couriers used something similar or something higher. This courier again has trails and effects which look exceptional. They're some of probably one of the best trails of all of the couriers. Its active particle effects aren't that good, but its trail is very good, and its model is quite good as well. There seem to be quite a lot of these couriers moving around as the years creep closer to current day, that even though the supply is low, because they're more recent, they're more on active accounts, so they're being moved across accounts more frequently. So the price reflects that. I think the cheapest one that I was able to find was about 3k, even though the supply is consistent with a couple of other couriers that are much more expensive. These are being traded more frequently. The Gingerbread Baby Roshan was originally added in the 2018 Frostivus event. It had a very low chance to be won on the Frostivus reward wheel. This was the first time we heard the term indescribably rare, which in this case means 0.0004%, or 1 in every 250,000. Now, these eye-wateringly low drop rates are often described as cosmically rare, unspeakably low, indescribably rare. Something similar to that often in Valve's terms means 1 in 100,000 for emblems, for example, or up to 1 in 250,000 is the highest I've been able to find. This courier at the moment is definitely on the lower end in terms of value, mostly because it was repeated again in 2023, but its effect in game is fine. The trail is okay. It's kind of just like a shitty version of the Candy Caster unusual effect you can get on items, and the courier itself is worth about 700 USD, is the price it's moving hands at the moment. The Honey Heist Baby Roche was available in 2019 from the 2019 Battle Pass. You could earn a consumable item that you could use in game, which was a trusty shovel, the same as the neutral item that's in the game at the moment, and when you used it and dug something up, it would give you a reward from the Battle Pass, like a treasure or Battle Pass levels or some junk or something like that. So when using one of those, you had a chance of getting this courier in a game, and again, this was described as cosmically rare, so this was 250,000 as well. I don't exactly know how many of these exist, but there seems to be a consistent amount of these compared to the Jade Roshan in the past, and the cheapest one I can find actively being sold is 950 USD. Its trail effect isn't very good, but the model is quite unique, and its aura is okay. I'm not sure exactly where I rank this one, but it's fine. Its value is consistent, I think, with the Gingerbread Roche. It's somewhat valued where it needs to be for how rare it is and isn't excessive because of how difficult they were to get. Now, these next two need some context. In the early versions of the Battle Pass, once you reached level 1000, you could apply to receive a physical Aegis statue in the mail months after TI. Now, they extended this first in 2017 to include level 2000, which had a unique reward promised of a Roshan statue. The first runs of these statues were an absolute mess for Valve. The company that they employed to develop and produce these products were ill-equipped to deal with this type of work and produced these like tiny little shitty statues. They looked absolutely horrendous in person and nothing like what was promised in the original versions that Valve showed off to players. And not only did they look terrible, they were delayed incessantly for years. I know this because I received one 2 years after TI 7. A box turned up at my door with this little fool in it, and by that point they had already sold 2 years of these fucking things to players, 2017 and 2018, and all they had to show for it was this horrendous tiny shitty statue. They found a new supplier and developed a much bigger and better statue that more closely resembled the renders that they showed to players what they were purchasing in the first place, and they ended up sending everybody a replacement statue. So everybody from 2017 and 18 ended up receiving 2, but this took so long, and these players that were purchasing level 2000 battle passes year after year were so valuable to Valve that they had to placate them, and they added these 2 Baby Roshan couriers to the game on May 26th of 2019, along with the announcement of the replacement statues. The Collector's Baby Roshan 2017 was actually released in 2019, and it was awarded to the players who purchased level 2000 on the Battle Pass during the TI7 event. This version of the Baby Roche courier is gold and blue. It doesn't have much of a trail effect, but its model is exceptional, and the colours are really good. I think this is one of the best that you can get, and not just because I have one. I think that this is one of the best models of all of the couriers. It looks very similar to the original versions that are the most popular, the gold and the platinum, and not like the different versions which are just completely different models like the Honey Heist and the Gingerbread. These 2 couriers really hark back to the best versions of the Roshans you can get, and these were not tradable and not marketable, but quite a few of these do exist. Some like in the thousands of these exist, so they're not massively rare, but because they can't be traded in any way, they can't be gifted or moved to a different account, they're some of the coolest that you can have, I think, in my opinion. The 2018 one was awarded at the same time in that same debacle. It looks similar to the platinum version of the Baby Roshan, but it is silver and green to relate to the 2018 theme of TI. It again doesn't have many particle effects and it's quite minimal, but its base model is very good. The Aghanim's Interdimensional Baby Roshan was released in July of 2020. It was awarded to players who were the top scorers in the Aghanim's Labyrinth event. It was a welcome return to a scoreboard-based reward and away from the 1 in quarter million drops. Every Sunday after July 21st, there was a 5-hour window where players could compete in Aghanim's trials, and players were scored based on how far they reached into the levels, and then once they reached the end, it was based on how quickly you got there. Players competed globally against all regions and against all players, and these leaderboards are still public. So each week, 4 players would receive the top prize, and in total, 144 interdimensional Roshans were awarded over the course of the event. I went through this leaderboard and I could only find a single person who still owned the original Roshan that they were dropped. It seems a lot of people sold these immediately because they look incredible and they were really in demand when they were coming out. They had a really high resale value at the time, and today the cheapest one I can find immediately for sale is $3,800 US. In addition to the 140 given out to the top scoring teams over the event, each week one random team who beat the Act 1 boss was awarded the courier also, so there are 280 of these total in supply. In 2023, with the Frostivus event again, the Gingerbread Baby Roshan returned, but this time it was inside a treasure, which would make it the first time that one of these couriers appeared in a full-blown $2.50 treasure with a 1 in 100,000 drop chance. So this puts the attainable value at like $250,000 per courier, and this courier was actually also possible to drop with the unusual effect that the treasure can provide, which was an additional 1 in 300 chance, which puts this as one of the single rarest drops in all of Dota 2. I think there are only 2 of these that I know to exist in unusual quality, but this was not a return to Roche couriers with gems. These unusual effects are not possible to swap out with others and they're locked to the item. Finally, the Servants of Scree'Auk Baby Roshan from Crownfall. Each of the Crownfall treasures contained a Scree'Auk Baby Roshan with a 1 in 100,000 drop again. Logic determines that these should also be possible to drop with the Crownfall effects, but I'm yet to see that be the case. When I've tried to load these in-game forcibly with unusual variants, they don't work, so they either don't exist or they're broken. The Scree'Auk Baby Roshan is, in my opinion, the worst of all of them. It looks the least like the original Baby Rosh model, and it doesn't have particularly interesting effects. I think that this could have been called a different name from the Baby Roshan subset, and it would have almost no inherent value apart from being rare. I think that this is the first time that they really have phoned in the fact that the Baby Roshan is inherently hyper valuable and hyper desirable because of how rare and its history that it has in the game. And I think that this is when it has all sort of come to a head, and I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing these couriers fall massively in value. You can see that there's kind of a barrier of about $700 that they don't fall below regardless of their supply, like the Gingerbread and the Lava and Fire Roshans. There are a lot of those that exist and they haven't dropped below about 700 USD. I would not be surprised when this courier is tradable for it to be worth significantly less. People are opening these treasures for free in Crownfall, and I'm expecting there to be a few of these, but I don't think people have much desire for them apart from them being exclusive. I don't think they're very good. But at the moment, I think people are asking like $2,000 for them. At least I know that $2,000 offers have been declined from some people who own these. I mean, the entire Dota economy is propped up on exclusivity and rarity, so even because I don't think these look very good, that might not have a massive impact on their price, and I could be completely wrong. But anyway, I thought that this was interesting. That's where they all came from. That's why some are rarer than others. Some are particularly expensive for no reason. Which one would you most like to use? Which one would you buy? Do you think any of these are actually worth the price that they're commanding? I think the ones that have unusual quality with gems in them that you can customize, I think are really cool. There are a lot of Lava and Fire Roshans that have things like Trail of Burning Doom with different colors of effects that look really awesome, and definitely better than some of the later Roshans, which are more expensive. But if you watch all of this, thanks for sticking around. If you have any questions or you want to know anything more about these, I'm happy to answer any questions in the comments.